pen and paper for this session. We want maximum participation, lots of engagement happening. The chat box is there for you to use. We want you to ask questions, want you to share your comments and thoughts. And it'll be a very enjoyable hour. I love having Sophie on with us, so it'll be a fun session guaranteed. So just a little bit about Sophie. Sophie has delivered numerous webinars for us over the last year. So you may recognise her if you've joined one of our webinars before. But just a little bit about Sophie. Sophie is founder and chief workplace culture specialist at Ordinarily Different Limited. She is previous director of HR and workplace culture with 17 years experience within her field. And she now trains, coaches and advises on culture and transformation projects with clients in and around government organisations, NHS, charities and the private sector as well. Sophie's forte is radical organisational and personal effectiveness and has spoken at many conferences, on podcasts and YouTube interviews, both here in the UK and the US. Sophie is also a FCIPD qualified HR professional, an executive career and life coach, and an action learning set coach. And not only that, Sophie is also a qualified yoga teacher and nutritionist. So she's pretty much an all-rounder, is what I say about Sophie. She actually did a yoga session with me and my colleagues last Friday virtually, and we were just discussing it this morning. And I think one of my colleagues said he had the best night's sleep that night. So that's a good start. But anyway, Sophie, I'm going to pass it on to you and take it away.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Andrea, for that lovely welcome. And thank you so much, everybody. I can see, I think we're about 58, 59 people on the session, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for giving up your morning to attend. Before I jump into talking about today's session, I need to let you know that I'm currently sharing my Wi-Fi with my daughter, who unfortunately is back at home doing homeschooling because the bubble was closed in her class. So just to say, normally my Wi-Fi is fine, but because I'm now sharing bandwidth with her, if anything happens and I drop out, Andrea is my PA for the session, so I'm sure Andrea will keep you amused while I wait to come back in. But normally when it happens, it only takes 1 or 2 minutes, so I won't be very long, but please don't go anywhere, do stick with it, but fingers crossed we'll be fine. Okay, so in today's session then, what are we going to talk about when it comes to personal brand? Well, I'm a really big advocate of talking about playing to your strengths, understanding what your strengths are, and how you can bring your strengths to play in your personal life, in your professional life, in your future career decisions, and even when we reach retirement, thinking about how do we bring them into play. And quite often we don't take enough time to invest in figuring out what our strengths are, realising what they are, and then doing something useful with them. So we're going to focus a little bit on strengths. It's a big subject, so I'm just going to kind of dip my toe in with you today. Then we're going to look at your values as well. What do you value about what you do? What do you value about life? What do you feel are your complete non-negotiables when it comes to work and it comes to your professional, your personal life? And then what are you passionate about? What really drives you? You all work in the civil service, so there's something there about giving and playing a part in society. But what is the bigger element of passion that comes alive for you, again, in your personal life and in your professional life? And then we're going to talk about how to bring it all to life. So once we know these things about ourselves, where can we bring them in to use them so they're actually effective for us? They play a part for us. So hopefully you're all in the right place. You haven't gone, oh, that's not quite what I was expecting. And so with no further ado, we will get going. So Andrea is my glorious PA. Andrea, thank you so much for being my slide transition today. I wanted to share this quote with you before we started. It's by a guy called Steve Bronkhurst. And he says, people waste precious years while believing there'll be more time tomorrow than there is today. But today is the perfect day to accept and develop our gifts and talents. And what I loved about this quote is that we're quite often pushing aside those passions, pushing aside those talents, those skills that we have. If they're not relevant for us right now, we kind of push them into the background thinking, oh yeah, well, I'll do that when I'm older, I'll do that next year, or I will wait until I'm retired and then I'll start doing these things. And actually, there's no better time than now. And often we don't step into that ways because maybe we've not fully realised what they are. So today's going to help you do that. And just to quickly remind you, if you haven't done so already, could you make sure you're muted, because I can hear some background noise. So if you would just quickly just check that your mic's definitely muted, that'd be perfect. Okay, so with this quote then, let's start talking about today is the perfect day for you to accept and develop your gifts and talents. So hopefully by the end of this session, you will have some idea on what your gifts and talents look like if you don't know them already. And if you do, what you might potentially want to do with them. So Andrea, if we could move on one more slide then. I would love to know in the chat. So Andrea, if you're okay to watch the chat for me and feedback.
I would, but Sophie, for some reason, it's not letting me actually look at the chat box, which is a shame, saying that it's preventing me. So you might have to do that bit.
Right, I'll see if I can get it open. Quite often Teams throws me out, but I would love to know why you chose to come to this session. What drew you here to be part of this webinar today? So fingers crossed it doesn't throw me out of the screen. And let's see why you're here. So while we're waiting for everyone to put their responses in, Andrea, I'd love to know why you chose for me to do this session. What was appealing about it for you?
And just to let you know, I can see the chat box now, so that's great. I just can't type in the chat box. But the reason why I wanted you to do this session is that we've never, at Civil Service College, we've never run anything like this before. It's a brand new topic for us, especially in the world of webinars. And actually, after speaking to a number of clients over the past few months, a lot of the things that you had put in your proposal for this webinar, Sophie, is what clients had been asking for. So I feel like it is in demand. But also I feel like over the last year, I've kind of personally lost touch of maybe who I am in the workplace as a person. I know what I'm good at and I know where my weaknesses are, but perhaps I think just with the pandemic and so on, I feel like everyone's probably in the same boat, feeling a bit lost. And we need that kickstart now. We're going into the world again. So that's why I'm quite excited about this session, Sophie.
And I love what you've said then. Actually, I think that echoes quite a lot of the comments in the chat. And the reason I propose this, Andrea, is because in my one-to-one, my coaching clients, a lot of the work I do is around career transition. So people are unhappy in their jobs and thinking, well, I don't know what I want to do next, or I'm emotionally tied to the job, but it's not right for me, or I'm financially tied to the job, it's not right for me. And so many people now are going, well, now maybe I know it's a scary time right now for me to make job decisions, but at the same time, I've learned new things about myself. I've learned things about myself that I didn't realise was the case, or I've lost myself over this time, and I want to get back to me. So that was part of the reason why I suggested it. So I'm really pleased it kind of sits with where you. And then looking at the chat, I think there's some fantastic comments.
There is some really good ones, yeah.
So Emma has said she wants to increase her confidence. Hannah has said a challenging period of work, thought this was a good opportunity to refocus, perfect for refocus and for confidence. Ingrid had said it's a time of change and transition. And it is, Ingrid, you're so right. Now is the perfect time for us to be thinking about who we really are and who we want to be moving into the future. Daniel has said to be able to better portray and sell me. Daniel, by the end of this, you may not necessarily have the outline for that, but you have all the resources to go away and build on that. So you actually know what your brand looks like and feels like. Rike has said to get motivated again after a long period of working from home, feeling a bit disconnected to the workplace. Absolutely. And when we know what we bring to the party, going back to the workplace, it may feel like you're stepping into a slightly stronger place than where you're at now. When you really know what you're about and why you're there and why you do the things that you do, what's behind all of it, it can really help drive that. Then we've got Sesek has said to help me refine my brand. Yes, so really understanding what your brand is, which we'll talk about in a minute. We've got Fuzaya, who says, I want to know why and how do I have a brand for myself? So yeah, why do you have the things you have? Why are you who you are? So this will definitely come when we talk about strengths. And then we've got Faye, who said in October, I'm taking on my first managerial role, so I want to enhance my confidence, who I am and what I am good at. Faye, you're going to love what I've got coming up for you.
Oh, good luck, Faye, for the new role as well.
And we're going to work on our leadership style. That's going to come up in this session, so that will be really great for you. And also, I've seen a couple of names that I recognise in here. Quite a few of you have been on my previous sessions, and I think Adele Logan, I think you come and join some of my other webinars that I do for the FDA, so I recognise you. So we're talking about personal brand then. It all sounds like we are here for the right reasons and the same reasons. So would you mind moving me on one more, Andrea? Perfect. So when we talk about a brand, what is it? When we say personal brand, what does it look like? What does it feel like? So Andrea, I'll ask you the question. What is a brand? What does it mean for you when I say the word brand?
It's something that someone would associate something with, I guess. When you see like the Coca-Cola bottle, you know straight away in your head when you think of that label, it's red and white, and you know the style of the writing, it's universal and it's massive. I guess as a person, when you think of it as yourself, it's someone's persona. It's how you kind of present yourself, your personality, what you stand for and who you are, what you believe in. So I guess that's the two when it comes to my mind. Sure.
Well, you've kind of covered half of the webinar already then. Because that's exactly it. But often we don't think of ourselves as a brand. We don't think of, oh, I'm the Andrea brand and I'm the Sophie brand, but we think of it externally. So we think of the experience and the feel that we have, and whether you are anti or pro Apple, for example. We think about Coca-Cola. If we move on to the next slide, there's a couple more here, where we think about, it's not even just recognising the brand. We all know the golden arches, don't we? We can normally see them from miles off when you're driving down the motorway. And the minute you see that, you know the McDonald's experience, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, or whether, you know, whatever, but you know the experience that comes with that particular brand. You know their slogan. So McDonald's, I'm loving it. You know with Nike, the experience when you put on a pair of Nike shoes, when you're doing a workout wearing Nike clothing. You could probably even watch an advert on TV from both of these brands and not have any logo in it or slogan in it, but you would know it was a McDonald's advert, or you would know it was a Nike advert, because they built this brand so strongly. And so we can do the exact same thing. We can be known, we can stand out if we wish to for our thing, for who we are, what we bring to the party. So your brand is your essence. And we're going to really work on today, not just kind of coming to the soul searching element of your essence, but finding those pathways to help you really understand what's your version of the Nike trainer, the Just Do It. What's your version of the I'm loving it? So we're going to find that for you, hopefully today, with the resources I'm going to share with you. So if we move on to the next slide then. So this is where we're going to start to get deeper then around your personal brand. So Andrea, a question to you then. If I was to ask you what is your personal brand, what do you think you would say to me?
Oh,
I put you on the spot, right? But this is a reaction, okay? So just share with me.
I guess I'd have to think of my strengths. It would be my strengths, I guess. Communication, openness, loyalty, open-mindedness, honest. I'm just really bigging myself up now. It's who I am as a person, my personality, my traits, and something I feel like I do kind of bring to the table.
Yeah, perfect. And so often when we think of personal brand, we tend to think about our personality traits. We tend to think about, actually quite often, who we are at work. And sometimes our brand, who we are at work, is a little bit different to who we are personally. And so your personal brand is about bringing all of that together. So it's not just, oh, this is Andrea, who she is, the professional, honest, person who's, you know, actually much integrity in civil service college. But when she's out of work, Andrea might also have this real kind of fun, loving, vibrant laughter element that really comes in as well, that perhaps isn't part of what comes out. Andrea's like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, it rings a bell, sounds about right.
Okay, so let's start exploring then. What are the different avenues we can go down then to find our personal brand? So again, Andrea, if you wouldn't mind moving me on one more. Perfect. So this came up in the chat. I can't remember who said it now, but it's your why. It's your purpose. So it was Fazua. I want to know why and how I do have a brand myself. So this why piece, it's your why, it's your purpose, it's your values and it's your strength, as I mentioned before. But it's how you light people up. It's how you feel good when you know you've done something great for other people. And that might be in a conversation, that might be in an email, it might be a random act of kindness. How do you light people up? It's also in how others light you up. How do you like to feel excited, re-energized, energetic? A conversation between me and Andrea is lighting me up because there's similar energy, right? I'm trading my high level energy for Andrea's high level energy, and therefore it's lighting me up. Other people might get more lit up from having a more quiet moment. They might feel more lit up by reading a book or having a more of a subdued personal one-to-one conversation rather than high energy. So there's no one size fits all here, but let's think about what lights you up. How do you light people up, and how do you get lit up by other people? It's that standing as tall as a building with the lights on. So I love this image here of the building where it's almost like you're owning everything you bring to the party. You're owning your values, you're owning your why, you're owning your strengths, and you're standing tall, and you're letting the world see that is what you are here for. That's what you bring. So it's your flow, it's your groove. When do you lose yourself in work? Where's that one thing that you love to do? Maybe it's not in work, maybe it's your personal life, that you actually have no concept of time. You could just sit there doing it all day and you just immerse your attention into it. So Andrea, what might that be for you?
Do you mean where I lose myself and I kind of go into another dreamland and I'm just, is that the type of thing I mean? Music. Music, when I'm focused, when I'm working through something, when I know I've got a deadline, I've got my music on, I kind of just get stuck right in. Talking to people as well, that's one massive thing for me. I couldn't be in a role where I didn't have that communication with someone, that interaction, because that's massive for me. That's a biggie. Yeah, I guess those are the two.
Perfect. So when we think about this, and you think about, right, well, I know conversation is incredibly important to me, and that's where I lose myself actually.
Yeah.
I mean, if Andrea said to me, Sophie, you've got 3 hours to deliver this webinar, I would completely fill that 3 hours in having this, and I would lose myself in the conversation completely. And you mentioned music as well, and music is such a great way to focus your attention, to get the work done. Depending on the music you choose, there's actually a lot of scientific research now based on different types of music and how it impacts with your brainwaves to focus. So I'm not surprised that music also has that element for you too. And I know for some people music isn't their thing, but again, that's part of your brand if that's the case. And perhaps even having conversations like this aren't for you, that's part of your brand as well. So when you know your strengths, your goal planning, whether it be your professional goals or your personal goals, or your dreams, that big, fat, hairy, audacious goal, as I call it, that big dream that in 5 years' time I want to own a boat and sail across to France, whatever that thing might be, it's 100 times easier to achieve when you know why you're here, why you do the things you do, the things you take enjoyment in. It all starts to come together so much easier. So let's start to explore some archetypes then around our personal brand. So would you mind moving me on one more?
Yep.
many of you have come across this. If you work in a marketing role or in communications, you may have come across these particular brand archetypes. But if not, I'm hoping they're relatively new to you. So these are 12 different types of characteristics that kind of accurately reflect certain personality traits. Now, if we think about archetypes, they are seen not only in branding and marketing, but they're also seen in things like this. Tarot cards. So there's archetypes here. Archetypes were heavily used within Greek mythology and within the ancient Egyptian civilization. So it comes from a really long lineage of us kind of categorizing different aspects of life, different aspects of personality. And I particularly love these particular brand archetypes because I think we can quite accurately kind of link ourselves to certain characters in films or certain people in the public eye. So if we think about, let's take the yellow type colours. So we've got outlaw there, we've got magician, and we've got hero there. And so the outlaw is very much focused on liberation. It's about freeing people from perhaps constraints. So perhaps a little bit of a rebel coming through there. Then we've got the magician, who is very much about having the power, mysterious elements of surprise. And then we've got the hero. So the hero is there to really master something, to really focus in and do something really productive. So when we look at these particular characters, they are about leaving legacies. And so if we think about the outlaw, a typical character here might be someone like James Dean, a little bit of an outlaw, a little bit of a rebel. When we think about the magician, who might come to mind for you when we think about a magician? Andrea, who springs to mind for you?
When I think about a magician, who's got the power?
Yeah.
My CEO. Yeah, I guess it would always come to someone at work or someone maybe that potentially that I don't really know, but when I have like an idea of someone who's really high up, whether that be a director or again a CEO or someone like a doctor or a lawyer, someone legal, someone regal, the queen, the queen.
Holds the power. So Sesek has said David Copperfield, great example. Derren Brown, Paul McKenna. Who's the guy? His name came to me and it's escaped me. The guy that held his breath underwater. David Blaine would be another example. So there's elements of power coming in because you have no idea what this person's going to do, but they're a real kind of weaver, magician. Gandalf was also an example that was offered up last time I did this exercise. So these people here within this yellow space are about leaving a mark. So it's not just about being a rebel, it's not about having power, it's about actually leaving some kind of legacy. And David Copperfield, I guess, is probably one of the most kind of popular names when we think of magic, isn't it? And then we've got hero, so mastery. And I like to think of someone like Neil Armstrong here in this hero mastery space, you know, being the first person to take a step on the moon, the mastery and the professionalism and the amount of training that went into be able to do that. And of course, he has become a hero, and he's still such a well-known name because of that particular character of him. Then we've got the pink coloured one. So this is more about connection, relationships with people. So we've got the lover, we've got the jester, and we've got the everyman. So a lover is very much about this need intimacy, wants connection. And it's not just about having a sexual kind of connection. It's actually just about knowing that when you speak to somebody, there is that level of spark, that relationship that comes through. And so a good example here is Marilyn Monroe. I think she is the perfect kind of epitome of that lover, that intimacy character. Then we've got the jester, who is about enjoyment. And so a character here that comes to mind for me is Jim Carrey. I think he's the perfect jester. Everything for him is about enjoyment, providing people with some sense of fun. And he connects with people because of that element of his character. And then we've got the everyman. And so the sense of belonging. And I often think with Everyman, think of, if you've seen the film with Will Smith, what's the name of it? Oh, where he plays a young dad who goes through such hardship. The name will
Is it the Happy something? Happy
In Pursuit of Happiness. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you, Hannah. Hannah said it as well. In Pursuit of Happiness. So the character that he plays in that film, you know, the single dad, really struggling, looking for a sense of belonging in the world. So I think an Everyman character for him, or every woman character, I think is perfect sitting there. So then we go into the blue side. So the blue side is about structure. The blue side is about giving service. It's about control, but it's also about innovation. So if we take a look at service caregiver, the number one person that comes to me is Mother Teresa. And I don't think it's by any accident that Mother Teresa used to wear blue, and that blue is the colour of the NHS. So you can see where some of these branding elements when it comes to colour start to come in, that we think of blue type brands as more of the caring type brands. And in fact, banks, think of the bank that you bank with. The vast majority of them have now shifted to using blues. So you think about Nationwide, Barclays, Halifax, Civil Service College is blue. So all these brands that tend to use blue are because they want to show you we are of service to you. And I guess the NHS is the biggest one that jumps out there. Then we've got control and ruler coming in. So this is really where this providing structure comes into play. And I think of Marlon Brando, his character, you know, the way he kind of emulated, even in his personal life, not just in his characters that he played. You know, think of The Godfather, that kind of ruler, providing structure, providing control. And then we've got the creator, so innovation. And I think this one has to go to someone like Steve Jobs. So the innovation, the control is coming in, being of service is coming in, but also the element of creation and that structure. Then we go into the green. So Emma, I've just seen your comment here about, do these align with Insights colours? And I would say loosely yes. So those of you that haven't come across Insights colours, there is typical personality traits that come with colours. So just very briefly, your yellow colours tend to be your more expressive, extroverted people, very much about building big relationships with people. They will be the people standing at centre stage. They love being in the limelight, and they're very much about what I call wooing people. And then you have your reds, which I'm guessing is kind of where these pinky colours are going, but it doesn't match up directly. Your reds are your drivers. They want to get things done. They want to push things through. So they're probably not as focused on relationships. So Emma, that's the one I think doesn't quite correlate here. Then your blue colours in Insights are your analyticals, which does make sense here because providing your structure. Your blues absolutely love structure. They love bullet points. They love neatness. They love sense of order, which does make sense in terms of providing structure. And then the greens are your amiables. So these people really love to have friendships with people, very averse to conflict. So they really want to make sure they've built a good solid foundation with people, which when we now look at greens, exploring spirituality, it may not necessarily be around spirituality. It may just be being a bit more inquisitive internally about ourselves. So let's take a look at innocent then. So we've got innocent and we have safety. So who might spring to mind? I'm going to throw this out into the chat this time instead of putting Andrea on the spot. Who might spring to mind when we think about innocence or a sense of safety? Think of perhaps someone in the public eye, perhaps an actor or a singer, somebody you know, even a character in a film. Who might come up for you in terms of innocence, safety? And Andrew, you can have a think as well. Let me know what you think. Any ideas? What's coming up for you, Andrea?
Definitely innocence and safety. I would have always, those two words would remind me of Princess Diana. I'm not too sure why. Obviously, given her persona and what she was back then. I'd say current day, the NHS. Anything to do with the NHS. especially during these really hard times. But yeah, as a person, isn't that really sad that I can't think of someone at the top of my head for something so nice?
No, I don't think it is sad.
I think that's it, especially it's interesting given current circumstances. I think the world is just going crazy right now. Everyone's just sheer doom and gloom.
I think Princess Diana's a good fit for this.
Yeah, she's definitely the first one that would spring to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a real, especially where you know, so many documentaries now have cropped up, haven't they, about her? And in fact, there's a series on Netflix which I think probably really accurately portrays that element of innocence and the element of as you see it coming through. So I think Princess Diana probably is a great example there. David Attenborough, Mike has said, yes, David Attenborough. And again, actually, you think about David Attenborough's brand and the fact that it fits in the green and how he's outdoors, he's nature related, he's very much about protecting the earth. He fits perfectly in that green space, doesn't he? So, Mike, that was a really good. I'm going to make a note of that one for next time I do this. I'll put David Attenborough on my list. Then we've got the sage. Now, for me, the sage is accurately embodied in Yoda. And again, for me, it's no accident that Yoda is green. So we're starting to see, even just in terms of the colours and the archetypes, how they link together. So, of course, if you've watched Star Wars, and I think even if you haven't, you know of the character Yoda, how he says very little, but what he does say, there's such power in his message, and he is the real guru almost. And then if we look to Explorer, so similar to Explorer, with Outlaw, there's this element of liberation, this element of freedom. And I think a great example of an explorer is Indiana Jones. Yeah, this person who's just like, I'm on a mission, I'm going to do what needs to be done, I'm going to do the right thing. And so character-wise, I think he fits perfectly. So now I'm going to throw it over to the chat. And obviously you haven't got to use the people I was thinking of, but which of these words around the outside resonated with you? So just maybe give one or two, drop them down in the chat. Do you resonate with outlaw? Do you resonate with caregiver? Do you resonate with jester? I can certainly pick almost one or two of them, which are all different colours actually. So while you're jotting yours down, Andrea, I'm going to ask you. So if you had to pick three, where do you think you would sit if you had to pick three of them?
Yeah, I'm just going around the circle because not just myself, when I'm looking at each one, I can always think of someone that springs to mind. So when I said earlier about power, I would always think about, you know, people at work above me and those at the top, and that definitely wouldn't be myself. But then in personal circumstances, I guess the power thing would lie with me, because then I am quite the outspoken, chatty one in, you know, outside of work and wherever it is. So I guess a little bit of power to a certain extent. I'm not just I'm not the quiet one. Freedom, I'm very, you know, like I said earlier, open-minded, non-judgmental at all, you know, open to try new things. So I guess freedom, enjoyment for sure, goes without saying. Got enjoyment, freedom, I think.
Perfect.
Maybe an ounce of power, but not to the power that everyone's probably thinking of. Definitely not control.
And this is the thing, because for anyone to choose control or to choose power, it's your own definition of that. It's not society's definition of power or society's definition of control. It's your own personal definition of that, because this is about you rather than what everyone else kind of interprets from that. So,
I would guess a little bit of understanding as well. I have to put that one in.
Yeah, perfect. So let's then move on to the next slide, just to put this into more context. When we think about different organisations and how they fit into this. So let's take a look here. If we look at Sage, for example, Google fits perfectly there, doesn't it? IBM fits perfectly there. The BBC fits perfectly there. When we think about innocent, Disney has a complete innocence about it. if you watch the Dove adverts on TV, it's very much about an element of innocence. And then again, you've got innocent smoothies, which are named after innocence. So I won't go through all of them, but you can see how some of these characteristics, these brands, have linked themselves to a particular archetype. So that's just one thing for us to keep in mind. If you were to think about an organisation that kind of aligns to your values, aligns to your sense of purpose, that you like to engage with, that you perhaps love to work for, perhaps, or perhaps you love their products, who might that be? So that starts to then also build up this kind of branding element of who you are and putting it into something more tangible. So you might say, actually, I'm like Chanel. I'm exclusive, I'm rich, and Chanel very much is about the lover. So the real connection there with Chanel, Marilyn Monroe. And then you think about other categories there within Chanel. You've got Dior, you've got BMW, even Magnum have crafted themselves around this. They're ice creams, but their name is quite an exclusive name. And it's very much about this kind of this sense of, you mentioned royalty earlier, didn't you? And perhaps it is about that. It's about having this almost this lover status. So I'm sticking with Chanel. That's going to be my one. Okay. So now we've got an idea of where we might sit in terms of our archetypes and in terms of how we link into the broader sense of brand. Where can we now take this? So if we move on to the next slide, here are some useful things that you might think about to help create a bigger version of your brand. So we've already seen, Emma has mentioned the insights colour. So that's a great place to head to if your organisation has the insights profiling, to figure out where your particular colour sits and what combination of colours you might be. But you've also got personality assessments like Myers-Briggs or the DISC or Thomas International. Most organisations, especially public sector, actually do tend to have something internally like that. So that starts to help build a picture. Now, the Strengths Finder 2.0 is it's one of my absolute favourites. Now, Strengths Finder is a book that you can purchase. So if you just Google Strengths Finder, you can either search for it under Strengths Finder 2.0, or there's an alternative version that Marcus Buckingham has produced as well. So you've got two options there. And what you get, in fact, I'll show you. Just bear with me a second. I'll pull mine off the shelf and I'll show you what it looks like. Find where it is. Okay. So this is what the Strengths Finder version looks like. It's a silvery coloured one. Now, when you buy this book, it's about £15. You get a code. So you get a code, little kind of scratch it off code. You go online and you input your code and you do the assessment. When you've got the assessment, you then come back to this book and it has a chapter on every single one of the strengths. And it talks to you about how can you elevate that particular strength? How might you want to bring that strength alive even more? So I think £15 investment for me, this is one of the greatest investments I've done. And actually, I've got about 5 copies of this now because I tend to do it every year just to see, have my strengths changed? What might I want to focus on? So you might end up with a great big library of these as well. But I really recommend this. Then there's 16 personalities, which is also one of my favourites. It is a personality profiling tool. It's completely free of charge. And what is so good about it is it talks about your strengths in real depth. It really kind of allows you to elevate your strengths and think about your strengths in a completely different direction. So, right, what was the name of the book again? So this is Strengths Finder 2.0. That's the one I've mentioned up there. But the book's actually called Strengths-Based Leadership. But if you just look under Strengths Finder 2.0, you'll definitely find it. So 16 personalities is excellent. It's my favourite version. I wouldn't use Myers-Briggs, DISC or Thomas International. I would just head for that one because one, it's free of charge and they give you such a good download on every element of the personality that you come out with the favoured. The BIA Institute also do one similar and they have one very specifically around strengths. Then you could look at your learning styles as well. So whilst we've spoken about colour communication styles, which is the insight profiling, your learning style will also tell you about how do you prefer to receive information? How do we prefer to give information out? So the way that we internalise things, some of you might be sitting on this webinar and it's really working for you, and others, you'll be going, yeah, but I'm a really analytical learner, and so I need statistics. I need to know the science behind why you're saying this, Sophie, in which case that your learning styles will be completely different to somebody else's. And then again, like I mentioned, you can even look at things like tarot cards, or you could look at things like dharmas if you're curious to dig a little bit deeper into that to help you build this bigger picture. So Alex has said, is it helpful to label ourselves and categorise companies into 12 archetypes? Not everybody who works at Apple is a sage. No, and you're exactly right to ask that question. So it's more about the feel of the brand rather than everybody. If everybody who's working at Apple was a Steve Jobs, nothing would get done. You would have to have people working at Apple who are the magicians, who are the controllers, who are the lovers. So you need to have all of those personalities coming together. It's just the feel the brand gives off. So when we think about these 12 archetypes, we're not saying you have to be one or two or three of them, and you're even actually consistent with that. Because if I go back to what Andrea was saying, one of yours was around magician and power, wasn't it?
A little bit.
A little bit. So I'm the same in terms of power. I run my own business, so I have to step into that space of producing magic for my clients and being very much in control and having the power when I'm delivering a message, for example. But that doesn't mean that when I'm in a coaching session that I can't sit back and relinquish control and just listen, be curious and ask questions. So labeling yourself and categorizing yourself, not necessarily, but I think it helps you to go, oh yes, I recognize that in me. I recognize that in me. And when I do this, that's when that element of my personality comes in. So I hope that's helpful, Alex. Okay, so let's move on then to talk about the leadership aspect of this. So again, there are different brands of leadership, and I know Bethany's on the call. I think I saw her name. And if any of you have done the introduction to management session with me, you'll recognise these next couple of slides, because I think they're really important to talk about. Whether we are in a leadership capacity or not, we all lead and manage our own lives. So I'm not just talking about this from a workplace perspective, I'm talking about this from a much grander scale with regards to who we are, how we show up in our day-to-day lives in terms of managing that too. So if we look at the authoritarian style of leadership, this is very much about you will do as I tell you, so very much authoritative and actually quite a negative style of leadership. However, it does have its purpose. If we think about what's happened during COVID-19, if we didn't have a leading authority saying we're going into lockdown and these are the rules around it and this is how we're going to navigate ourselves out, we would have chaos. So whilst overall the authoritarian may be seemingly negative, there are times and places where we have to step into that type of role to make sure we can keep people safe and get the things done that need to be done. Then if we look at visionaries, this is all about bring people on board. I often come across visionaries when you see people giving like keynote speeches at conferences. Quite often the last person to speak is going to be the visionary, the one that wants to get you on board, wants to bring you into the dream or the purpose, or perhaps the policy that's coming into place, and they want to gee you up to get involved in it. So this is very much about kind of hunter-gatherer, come join me, be part of this with me. And a good example here is Elon Musk, how he's gathering people together on his vision to get people on holiday in Mars. Then we've got the affiliative. So this is very, very much about, do you know what, I'm self-sacrificing and I'm going to work for the good of the people. So everything is about, I'm not going to deal with this until I understand about how my people are feeling about making this decision or going in this direction. Then we've got a coaching, which is very much about making suggestions and saying, oh, might want to try this. Maybe we could try that. What's happened if we did it this way? What happened if we did it that way? So we now have this coaching element coming in. Then we've got the pace setting, which is do it like I have done it and do it now. Copy me. I'm role modeling this, and you need to keep up to speed with me. You need to make sure that when I say something, we all go and we all go at the same time. And if we think about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and the history we know of how Facebook was formed, and obviously the legal challenges that came with that, and if you've watched The Social Network, the film, then you'll understand this pace setting coming in from that part of his personality, through to how Facebook has evolved into this absolute monster, which, again, think about the colouring and the branding of Facebook. It's blue. And so Facebook have tried to create this element of being of service, being a caregiver, but I'm not sure all of us would necessarily agree with how that brand is now kind of contradicting itself. And that's partly because of the person who's in leadership, which is this pace setting. Don't question. Don't even think about whether we're doing the right or wrong thing. Just follow me and get on board. Then we've got the democratic. So this is more about asking people the question. I'm not going to make a decision until I know what you all think. How do you think we might be able to approach this? So democratic and coaching work very, very closely together. Coaching is more curious. Democratic is more, let's let everybody else decide. And so Jack Dorsey, formerly of Twitter, I don't know if he's at Twitter anymore, but he certainly has that kind of feel. And then we've got the laissez-faire, the completely laid-back style of leadership. In terms of branding, I can think of many leaders actually in my career who've been so hands-off that actually you think, look, what point are they going to play a significant part in what's going on? And actually what you realise is what they're doing is they're giving you the freedom to fly. So they're behind you, they're pushing you from the boundaries, but they're letting you do the thing you need to do. And so a good example here is John F. Kennedy. If you think about managing the Apollo mission, he had no expertise in that space, probably didn't even think that'd be part of his remit when he took on the role of presidency. So he had to give control over and say, yeah, I'm going to support you, I'm going to back you, but you can go do the work that needs to be done. So again, we can start thinking about what's our leadership stuff? What's our leadership styles? So Andrea, which one or which ones are resonating for you when we think about that?
Definitely a bit of democratic, because I like to hear other people's thoughts. It's not just if I'm a leader in a situation, doesn't mean what I think is going to be right. Perhaps someone else's thoughts or ideas might complement what I've got. I definitely a bit of visionary.
Yeah,
I think a little bit of visionary. Yeah, I guess those are the two main ones for me.
Perfect. And I think probably lots of people are thinking, actually, I'm visionary when I'm doing this, but then I have to become authoritarian when I'm doing that.
Yeah, definitely. It's different situations, whether it's in work, out work, personal circumstances, conflictive circumstances.
So what's interesting is also the ones that you feel that you are definitely not like. Which ones, when I described it, you go, oh no, that's not me? Because that's likely to be the ones that are like, they know. The others will sit within your leadership style, but there may be some that you think, no, that's just not who I am. Now, this is incredibly important. So if we go back, and again, I can't remember who said it now, about merging into their new leadership. Going back to talking about our strengths, I've pulled off the strengths that are in this Strengths Finder book here. So again, those of you like Bethany who were on my introduction to management, you'll recognise this. But these are the 20 strengths that are within the book that I mentioned. And then there are 4 themes, as you can see. So executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Thank you, Sally. See you later. So when you do, if you do this, but we can even do a crude version of it now. When you do this, you will find out which ones of your strengths tend to sit in most of these columns. Now, what's interesting is a pattern that might occur. So if I was to ask you to just look at these words now, as you can see them on the screen, there's 20 of them, just pick out 4 of them for me that you think accurately reflect you. Just pick 4. And it looks like the chat function's working now. So before, when I was asking you questions around the archetypes, I thought, oh no, I've really lost everybody because no one's replied, but I think you all couldn't access it. So now in the chat function, if it's working, let me know which 4 are coming up for you. Which it's so difficult just to choose 4, but what are kind of the main ones that spring to mind for you? Again, I think the chat's gone again. It says chat. Lots of people no longer have access to the chat. Okay, right. Thank you very much for everyone that's leaving. I really appreciate your time. For those of you that are staying then, if, say, for example, mine is achiever, mine is woo, it's harmony and connectedness. So you would see, this is just off the top of my head, you would see that I've got 1 in executing, 1 in influencing, and 2 in relationship building.
Oh, I've got some coming through now, yeah.
Sorry, say that again, Andrea.
I've got some comments coming through now, so that's great.
Now, aren't they? But it's not a lot in strategic thinking. So when it comes to my strengths, I can start thinking about, okay, so if I've not got a lot of strategic thinking going on, how can I use my focus, my woo? Woo is very much an extroverted characteristic. So it's about you like to go and really impress an audience and have people listen to your message. So how can I use focus, woo, and connectedness, and what was the other one I said, empathy or harmony? How can I use those 4 things to help me be more strategic? So if you think about the 4 words you've chosen, again, it's just a crude activity. Until you've done this, if you decide to do that, it'll be much more in depth for you. But you might notice that you're stronger in some columns than you are in others. And if that's the case, you can then start to think about, well, actually, if I'm well connected and I like harmony, so therefore I don't like conflict, how might that help me in my strategic thinking? How might being woo, someone who likes to tell a story, who likes to be at the forefront of the room, how might that quality help me in my strategic thinking? So just thinking about that very crudely, you will start to then also start adding more elements to your brand in terms of who you are and what you bring to the workplace and your personal life. So if we now move on one more slide, I want to ask you a question here. And again, let's see if the chat works. Whether you use your strengths every day. So can you think of the work that you do and do they come into play every day? So Andrea, do you think you use your strengths every day?
No.
No.
Not every day, no. It depends. I think it depends what kind of mood I am. I mean, what physical task I'm doing, what mental task I'm doing. So it differs whether I'm at work, whether I'm not at work. It's all about the environment and the state of mind you're in, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also how you choose to tailor your work to
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
For example, obviously I realise this is me talking from a business perspective rather than from my corporate experience. But running my own business, I am high on woo, which means I'm high on influence from that perspective. But when I have to write a proposal for a client, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do this. Like, the worst thing I can think of is just sitting there filling in a Word document. And sometimes it takes me about 2 days because I just don't want to do it. It's not a strength of mine. And then I thought, well, how can I bring my woo into this? And so what I do now is I write a short overview and then I do a video to accompany it. That's me stepping into my strength then. So if we look at the detail here in this slide, it says only 15% of people use their strengths every day in the UK. 85% of people aren't using their strengths every day. And so I'm pretty sure there's going to be people on this call who also recognise what Andrew is saying about not necessarily being able to use your strengths every day. So when you realise them, then you can start bringing them more into play. Like I did with writing this report. Actually, I didn't have to write this report for my client, this proposal. I can actually put it into a video. So how can you start thinking about where these strengths might come through? So if we move on to the next slide, they're just coming back up now. So Laura has said, how do you know if a new company will enable you to play to your strengths? Isn't this a fault of the recruitment process? Absolutely, Laura, completely. And I think it's also for you to ask the question in the interview. I remember interviews are a two-way process, right? Where you're thinking about, does my personal brand align with the organisation? It's not just the organisation thinking about whether you fit with them. So you can ask the questions, relate them to your strengths, and ask some questions around, if one of your strengths or one of your archetypes is freedom, you can ask some questions around, oh, so what's the typical leadership style in this team then? Or how would you manage me on a typical day? So you can find out, actually, is there a lot of autonomy or isn't there? And you can make a decision whether you want to work for that organisation based on that. So jumping back to your questions then. So question number 2 was, in what situation was that and who was you with? So hopefully you've had a chance to write that down. Number 3, what skills and talents were you using? And is there a pattern? What skills and talents were you using? And is there a pattern? What's the pattern? So again, while you're writing that down, I'll give you an example of mine. Is where, if I think back to when I've been most successful, it has involved me being a teacher, teaching something, coaching something, or standing at the front of the room and giving the message, which is now why I'm here today, completely playing to my strength and loving being in this situation. I mean, it's dangerous that Andrew has told me I can carry on, because
please just do whatever you need to do.
So what are you using at that time when you had your high achievement, and what is the pattern? What can you see emerging through what is common through some of these things? Okay, and then I've got a 4th question for you. So number 4 is, list your skills and your talents then, from what we've just gleaned from these previous 3 questions, and even start adding more to it, starting with the ones that excite you and energise you the most. So there are things that I'm skilled and talented at, but they don't really excite me or energise me. I'm quite skilled and talented at doing data analysis. I can look at numbers and I can find the story. I can find patterns. I can see that number and see what's behind it. And actually, my curious mind wants to question and delve in more. But that doesn't excite me. It doesn't energise me, which is why I don't spend much of my time doing that in my job. So what does? What skills and talents do you have that are the highest ranking ones for you? So this might be a little bit of homework for you after this call, rather than doing it all now. But these will now start to bring together your strengths. Will start to bring together a sense of your why as well. Why you do the things you do. So I know why I do what I do now, because I'm so high in woo. Obviously, this revelation came out and told me I was high in woo, and now I've realised that, and I'm happy to be in that space, and I'm owning it, and now that's part of my brand, which you could probably tell, because being woo is about being bold and bright. And look at even what I'm wearing today, bold and bright. And I think Andrea and Bethany, who's on the call, will probably agree that very rarely have they seen me in a training session or a webinar where I'm not bold and bright and energetic, and that is so authentic to being woo. So think about that for yourselves as well. Hannah, thank you very much. I've just seen your message. So if we move on to the last slide, we're starting to wrap up now. Bethany is using colour, and if it's not the top, it's normally the lipstick that does it. So yeah, let's move on. So how do we then bring it to play in work then? Because I'm guessing for most of you, this is kind of the angle you're probably thinking about this most. Where does it fit? So think about, what are your organisation's values? How do your values fit with the organisation's? Now, I used to work for an organisation whose values were honesty, integrity, and partnership. Now, there's nothing wrong with either of those, and they're absolutely critical, right? Honesty is very important to me, so is integrity, and so is partnership. But it didn't set me on fire. Not like an organisation, in fact, one of my clients, whose values are togetherness, magic, and co-creation. Like for me, I'm like, oh, those words set me on fire. I want to be in a place that's all about magic and co-creating with each other. So how do your values align with your organisations? And this is where this recruitment piece comes in really important. Think about your values and think about the ones the organisation is espousing. How closely do they fit together? And do they light you up? So then when we think about values and behaviours then, so what we start to embody in the workplace, how do you demonstrate them? So let's say, for example, I use my client again, this co-creation, the magic, the togetherness. How do you then embody that and bring that into who you are? So how do I become magic? What do I need to do to become magic? What does having magic even look like? We've explored this earlier, didn't we, around power and the element of surprise. So having everyone in your space having this magic experience, how do you demonstrate that? So then think about what you're passionate about. Why do you do the job you do? Why are you in the role that you're in the organisation that you're in? Something is making you do this job, hopefully above and beyond pay and conditions. You're there for a reason. You're passionate about providing services. You're passionate about looking after the people in your organisation, perhaps. So then think about your strengths at work. So you can go back to your strengths finder, or you can even just look down that list that I shared with you. And so how will your organisation know what you're good at? Have you even shared this with them? In your one-to-ones, do you talk about your strengths? Do you come up with suggestions in team meetings that are going to play to your strengths or play to the strengths of the people around you that you've noticed? And perhaps you think, oh, this person's got a real flair for design or real flair for being creative with words, but they're not really using that strength. So how can you elevate the strengths of others as well? And then think about how consistent you are with playing to your strengths as well. So really bringing that focus in so that you start to really own your brand, and you know that when you walk into work, you are the woo one, you are the creative one, you're the analytical one, you're the listener. Really own that in the work that you do. So, Andrea, I'm going to leave it there because we've already gone over 15 minutes. I don't want to take up anyone else's time. But what I'd love to know is, what are you going to take away from today's session? So just drop me down in the chat. Let me know what has been most useful for you. You will get all of these slides, so you can go back over and look at those archetypes again. You can look at the organisational ones. You can then think about those strengths that I shared with you and the leadership archetypes. So you've got a few resources there you can go back and review. And as is always, I'm always happy to take any questions from anybody. If you go back, review the slides, or look at your notes later and you think, I'd love to ask that question, you've not had time to ask it now, then of course, please do go back and get in contact with me. So any questions, drop them down in the chat for me. Me and Andrew will keep an eye out here. So those that need to go, thank you so much for sticking with the session. I'll hang around for another couple of minutes in case there are any questions. And thank you very much, everybody.
Absolutely. And sorry, everybody, for the technical glitch from start to end. We were joking at the beginning of the call about the bad news, the football on Sunday and the weather. And then we were like, things can only get better. But there you go. Technical glitches do happen. Just thank you, everyone, for your patience. We did get through it in the end. But not to worry, because we will send out the recording and the slides to you all, so we'll make sure everything is edited out to make it look really smooth and streamlined. But that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophie. And again, Sophie is going to hang around here for 1 or 2 minutes while I just have a good old natter on to you all. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. We'll answer those very shortly. It's just to date with our webinars, our sessions, projects, events, whatever we're doing, please do check out our website. It's www.civilservicecollege.org.uk. You will be able to see some of Sophie's courses and her work on there as well. And we do have a backlog of webinars to catch up with as well. And there's a lot on there that Sophie has actually produced for us in the past, so you can check out her past work as well. Just a quick one. The next thing that we are doing is the Equality and Diversity and Inclusion Virtual Summit on the 22nd of September. Please do check our website and find out more information. I have just put a little bit on the slide there for you. It is just to gain insights and listen to leaders, influencers and change makers to share their experience, perspective and empowering stories. It's a networking opportunity for you all to connect with your peers and widen your network as well. And it's there for you to enhance your career by learning something new across a range of topics and develop your career development, and we would love to see you there. The theme of the day is building a better working world. So we would love to see you at our virtual summit. Please check our website for more information in order to get tickets and so on. And in order to stay up to date with us, we are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and YouTube as well. This recording will go on YouTube and you will get a copy as mentioned. Sophie, I don't know if there was any questions in the chat box.
Yes, I've just seen one. I've been trying to scroll through and then it kept resetting the screen. But I picked up one from Pauline Lewis, who says, how can people review their transferable skills and seek or create opportunities for employment or business? So I'm trained as an accountant and qualified as a counsellor while I was working. So I'm actually really excited about this for you, Pauline. Just thinking about what a great combination you don't normally get, and dare I say, in a stereotypical accountancy role. So think about the skills of a typical accountant. It's very analytical, very data driven. Quite often accountants are quite introverted. And what you're bringing to the party here is qualified as a counsellor is this interest in people and not just number. So I think you've got a really interesting combination here of two really almost not opposing skills, but two skills you very rarely see together. And so your question about how can people review their transferable skills and create opportunities in employment or business, I'm thinking with a business hat on, is imagine being a counsellor for people who work in these technical roles that quite often find it quite difficult to open up. So I'm not just saying accountancy, but technical roles. So think about software developers, engineers, example, people that are very, very analytical spaces. You've got a fantastic skill set and a fantastic background to be able to bring those two together, where you could provide your services in that space. Or you could even go into an accountancy company but work in more of a counselling-based role. So I think there's so many opportunities you've got here to think about what could I do that's really unique that would bring the two of these together. I don't know if that's helped you, Pauline, or if it's answered your question, but I'm quite excited about that combination. I don't know if I've seen anything else. Oh, hang on, there's one more I think that's come up from Eleanor. What do you recommend if the answers and insights for exploring are hard to get flowing? My mind goes blank. Eleanor, my answer to you there would be oh good, Pauline said yes, is to find a coach or a mentor. Perhaps there's somebody in your organisation. I know so many civil service organisations do have coaches, or perhaps a mentor in your organisation you could speak to, or even just sit down and talk about it with a family friend or your partner around, oh, I want to talk about this stuff, because talking about it sometimes helps it come out easier. And having someone there to go, oh, that's really interesting, Emma, that you've said that. I wonder how you could expand on that. So you could do that. If conversation isn't your kind of thing, then you could just mind map it. Just literally think of the words that come to mind and write them down. Often your mind goes blank because you're placing judgment on the answer. Your mind goes blank before it's even registered. Like your body wants to say to you, oh, Eleanor, you're really good with people. And before that's even come out of your mouth, your mind has gone, yeah, but remember that time when this thing happened, and it just escapes your head there and you don't write it down. So you could have a chat with somebody, or just pick up a pen and just literally write whatever comes into your head. No judgment. Don't try and rationalise it. Don't try and categorise it or put it somewhere. Just write it down and see what happens. So that's my two recommendations for you. Andrea, have you picked up any more questions? Have I missed any?
I think it was just with some really lovely comments and feedback, Sophie, for you. I don't know if there was any other questions there, but I did put your email address on there if anyone did have any questions for you. So I'll just stick that.
Perfect.
And everyone, you can contact me as well if you do have any questions for Sophie. It's Andrea at civilservicecollege.org.uk, but there's these details as well. But Sophie, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And yeah, can't wait to have you back on very soon.
And thank you so much, everybody, for overrunning 20 minutes. Wow, I've never run over that badly. But thank you very much for sticking with us. Thank you so much for all your lovely comments. It's so great to see all the fantastic takeaways and that you've stuck with it as well. I'm so sorry, Andrea. Both me and Andrea both had to going on both sides. So
don't worry.
Thank you for your commitment. I really appreciate that, and I really hope this is of use to you moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.